Do4 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of L2. Do12 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of T3. Do14 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of C7 in a depression. Bladder 11 is 1.5 cm lateral to the posterior midline, below the spinous process of T1. Going to find the inferior border of T1 and come directly lateral to it on the height of the paraspinal muscle.
To locate gallbladder 20, palpate up the groove in between the sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscles. As you get to the base of the occiput, you will find a nice depression. Gallbladder 20 is in the centre of that depression. Do16 is located on the posterior midline at the base of the occiput. To find the base of the occiput, palpate down to about 1 cm superior to the posterior hairline. If you rock the head backwards and forwards very gently, you should be able to feel the cleft between the base of the occiput and the spine. Make sure you mark this point directly on the posterior midline. Do18 is on the posterior midline, halfway between Do20 and Do16. Do19 is on the posterior midline, 1.5 cm posterior to Do20, which places it at the junction of the upper quarter and lower 3/4 of the line joining Do16 to Do20. Do20 is located in relation to the midpoint between the glabella and the occiput. Place the heel of your palm on the glabella and the occiput. Fold your fingers around the skull to find the midpoint. Do20 is located 1 cm posterior to that midpoint. It typically lies in a nice dip. There are several other nice dips slightly further back, which are other do points, so don't be tempted to go further back than 1 cm posterior to that midpoint. Do21 is located on the midline, 3.5 cm posterior to the anterior hairline and 1.5 cm anterior to Do20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cm for Do20. 1, 2, 3 and a half for Do21. Do23 is located on the anterior midline, 1 cm posterior to the anterior hairline. We take the distance between the centre of the glabella and the anterior hairline as being 3 cm. So divide this into 3 to get your 1 cm to move back to locate Do23. Do24 is located on the anterior midline, midway between Do23 and the anterior hairline. Do26 is on the anterior midline at the junction of the upper third and lower 2/3 of the philtrum. Extra point seal hall is on the anterior midline on the glabella, directly between the medial ends of the eyebrows.
Large intestine 4, you're going to find the length of the second metacarpal bone. So running your finger down, finding the base, making sure that you're not actually on the carpal bones themselves, finding the midpoint of that shaft of bone, coming between the first and second metacarpals, nearer to the second than the first in the muscle.
Large intestine 10 is located 10 cm proximal to large intestine 5 on a line heading towards large intestine 11. Palpate along that line and fall into a nice groove in the muscle at 10 cm. Large intestine 11 is located at the midpoint between lung 5 and the prominence of the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Typically, this is at the end of the transverse cubital crease when the arm is fully flexed. Small intestine 3 is on the ulnar aspect of the hand. It's in a depression which is proximal to the head of the 5th metacarpal. It's in between the metacarpal bone and the muscle, and it typically lays on a level with the distal palmar crease. Small intestine 4 is on the ulnar aspect of the hand, in this nice depression between the base of the 5th metacarpal and the triquetral bone, which is this palpable bone on the ulnar aspect of the wrist.
Pericardium 6 is on the flexor aspect of the forearm. It's 2 cm proximal from pericardium 7, and it's in between the two tendons palmaris longus and flexor carpal radialis.
Pericardium 8 is found on the palmar aspect of the hand in this nice dip which is proximal to the junction of the heads of the 2nd and 3rd metacarpals. The point is just a little closer to the head of the 3rd metacarpal. Sanjiao points on the forearm are best located with the arm laying flat on the bed and the elbow turned outwards. To find Sanjiao 5, come 2 cm proximal to Sanjiao 4, in between the radius and the ulna. You should be on the radial side of the tendon of extensor digitorum communis. If the person wiggles their fingers, this tendon will come into relief.
Lung 11, it's at the radial nail point of the thumb. So in order to find that point, I'm going to look at where the proximal and radial borders of the nail meet. I'm going to look at the nail bed, feel for where the flare of the bone is, and put my point in.
Spleen 4 is located in a depression which is distal and inferior to the flare of the base of the first metatarsal. Feel along the inferior border of the first metatarsal, find the flare of the base and place your point in between that flare and muscle. Spleen 4 is about 1 cm proximal to spleen 3. Be careful when palpating along the inferior border of the metatarsal that you don't overshoot the head and find this nice dip in between the medial cuneiform bone and the base of the metatarsal. It's a nice dip, but it's not spleen 4. Spleen 6 is located 3 cm superior to the medial malleolus, half a finger breadth posterior to the medial crest of the tibia. Be sure not to place this point actually on the bone. Stomach 36 is located approximately 13 cm superior to the prominence of the lateral malleolus on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. The easiest way to find it is to palpate down the tibial tuberosity. Find the base of the tibial tuberosity and move slightly laterally until you fall into a nice dip on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. This point is also 3 cm inferior to the inferior border of the patella. Stomach 41 is located on the anterior aspect of the ankle flexure. It's on a level with the prominence of the lateral malleolus. It is located in between the tendons of extensor hallucis longus and extensor digitorum longus. To reveal extensor hallucis longus, get the person to pull their toe up against resistance. Locate this point in a nice dip just lateral to that, actually in the ankle joint. Articulate the ankle to make sure you are actually in that joint. Stomach 42 is located on the dorsum of the foot between the second and third metatarsals and the cuneiform bones. It's approximately 1.5 cm proximal to stomach 43. In some people, when they point their foot and pull up their toes, a nice depression appears here. Gallbladder 34 is located in a depression which is anterior and inferior to the head of the fibula. To locate the head of the fibula, find the tibial tuberosity and move laterally until you find a prominent bony landmark. Be sure that you don't confuse the head of the fibula with the lateral condyle of the tibia, which is closer to the kneecap.